Yeah, I think they are going to get him sacked, and I don't think they are going to turn around and start winning again. I'm sick of it. I'm watching the games and I see no patterns of play. I'm seeing no systems. Like, whatever they're doing on the training pitch, it's not translating to the pitch. And I think Ten Hag, he needs to go back to the beginning of his tenure, after the Brentford game. He came out, he made a run, that extra 13k in training. He needs to go back to that really strong disciplinarian and start holding these players to account. Drop the big names, drop Rashford, drop Fernandes. Start playing players who are going to put some passion on the pitch. We're getting outrun, out-muscled, and it's just a complete shambles every single game, week in, week out. We see no improvement, and it's going nowhere.
Steve, are you not seeing the same pattern, though, with every manager who comes and goes? It's the same kind of thing that comes about, isn't it?
It is, and do you know what? I didn't want to mention it. I am an anti-Glazers supporter. I've got my reasons why. I won't go into them now. I think it'll take too much time. But at the same time, the manager has got to... He's the one who's responsible for on-the-pitch performances, and he's got to do something on the training pitch. You can't tell me if Pep came in, he wouldn't get a better tune out of the players. And that's down to the manager. If he's not communicating well, that's on him. If his training sessions aren't going well, that's on him.
Do you make him right for the choices that he's made, Steve? You know, obviously he jettisoned De Gea. He's put Maguire into a camp of, you know, I'll call you if I need you. The Jadon Sancho situation has manifested itself. Do you make him right in those decisions? Because some would say he's been strong in those areas, and all of a sudden the narrative is starting to spin now that Harry Maguire has been treated appallingly. What's your view on all that?
I think he was right with the De Gea situation. As good a servant as he'd been, he was making as many errors in the Premier League as any other goalkeeper. We're seeing that, so it was the right time to move on. Again, with Sancho, you know, in your words, he's stunk the place out since he's came, and he's been absolutely appalling, and I back him on that situation as well. I think with the Maguire situation, I think when Lindelof's getting picked above him, you know, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth, and, you know, Varane's not been great. Lindelof's not been great. The only one that's been half decent is Martinez. So, yeah, I think he's been a little bit harsh on Maguire, and he's almost put himself into a position where he can't go back on the fact that, you know, I've made the decision. If I turn and go back to him, I'll make myself look a little bit stupid.
Do you think he's got it? Do you think... I mean, I made this observation, which people sort of hoist me by, which is I thought he was a small man in a big suit. It wasn't about what he's wearing. It's about the presence that he had. You guys see him repeatedly and endlessly. Do you think he's got the what I say is the chops to dig you out of this particular predicament that you're finding yourself in again?
I thought he did. I thought he did last year when he came in and he was ruling with an iron fist. And you've seen it with players at United. And, you know, my biggest two that I really, really find it difficult to watch is Martial and Rashford, because they drag their knuckles along the pitch, sulking every time it doesn't go their way. Yes. And he seemed to really get a grip of that last year. But now this year, when it's not going well again, I don't see any change. So I'm like, is he just sinking into the shadows and not able to change it?
Steve, you've spoken really well, mate. We appreciate the calls. Many good points in there. Kenny's a big Manchester United fan. Kenny, I've got to say, you want to see some of the messages we're getting here this morning. Time up for Ten Hag. What about Bielsa? Get a hold of him. Get him to Old Trafford. He'd knock them into shape, says Tim from Bewdley. I don't know about that. But Kenny, where's your head with this morning? Are the players about to win again? Will another manager at Manchester United end up being dumped out?
I think he will. Ten Hag, it's like the Emperor's clothes. He's the only one who can see what's going on, and he thinks it's all okay. He's taking the fans for mugs. I was behind him when he came in. He's got to be given a chance. But this club are rapidly becoming a joke. We're becoming one of these clubs. Oh, do you think we can make the top four? Do you remember the time where there used to be a court inquiry when United never won the league?
Yes.
We now have acceptable mediocrity. That's what we'll go. Here's a hypothetical question for you guys. If the takeover takes place in Radcliffe, or Prince Yassim seems to have disappeared, but if he comes in and none of these players play for United already, and it's an open marketplace, how many of them would we buy? The answer to that's none. We're buying players that Chelsea don't want. Do you see the first goal last night? Mason Mount meanders across, and it's basic coaching. He gets caught square on. He dives in and he's square on. The Newcastle player goes past him, and all he has to do now is get past Lindelof and Maguire. Well, I'm sorry, but my nan could get past these two. It's embarrassing.
Kenny, before you go, a yes or no? Time up for Ten Hag?
Time up. I'm all for backing managers, but some of these players, the reason some of them, I know people are saying they're not trying. I think some of them are trying. You know why we're getting beat? Because these players should never have wore a United shirt. They're not good enough. Victor Lindelof at the back. If anyone can get a clip on YouTube or any of the channels of Lindelof making a tackle, do you see him? He dives out the way on the second goal last night. Do you remember when Vidic and Stam and Steve Bruce used to throw their face in the way?
Yeah, I bet you were those players back in those days back. Kenny, thank you for that. Ryan, so many calls coming in. We're going to squeeze you in, Ryan. What's your take on it all this morning as you reflect on another defeat?
Oh, it's just getting beyond a joke now. But I think I'm in Simon's group. I think the manager is partly to blame, but the players, any job in the world, my job, the corner shop, any job in the world apart from a footballer, if we performed like the Man U players did on the pitch, we'd be sacked. Never mind dropped to the bench and paid full wages. You wouldn't have a job. And I agree with all the previous callers. The players weren't good enough when we brought them in, and that's part of the problem.
I mean, now, Ryan, it's got to the stage that you just cannot predict if United will win their next game, and that next game is at Fulham on Saturday. If they lose, Ryan, would you be fairly unperturbed if Ten Hag was to go?
I don't like seeing managers lose their jobs. I think they should be given time. He has been given time. But my biggest thing with it is, who do you get? Who's available now? And would we pay for them? Would we get them? And the answer is probably not.
Yeah, and what profile do you go for? To be honest, they've had everybody, haven't they? Serial winners, club legends and disciplinarians. Ryan, thank you for that. I mean, Simon, they're in a mess.
Well, they are in a slightly invidious position right now, but it's not beyond the wit of man to find their way through it. When we talk about who would take this job, people would run a mile to take the Man United job in the same way that
Would they?
Real Madrid sack managers for fun. Real Madrid have gone through managers like Epsom salts. And the bottom line is that United will find a manager if Ten Hag's time is up. But the argument about the players and the culture of the players, team reflects leadership. And if there isn't enough of a buy-in to Ten Hag's and there's a debate about whether the player's responding to him, then that can only be a one person. Why do people say, why is it always the coach? Because team reflects leadership.
I'm seeing a lot of messages. I wish Simon Jordan was at the top of the house at Manchester United right now. Say you were. What's top of your wish list this morning? What's top of your to-do list?
Well, I think clearly, like in any situation where there's a perceived crisis, and there's two kinds of crises. There's a crisis through the media and there's a crisis in real life, right? When you're actually in it and you understand it for yourself and you see the real situation. If I'm sat there with a manager that I am beginning to see not the initial performances or the individual performances, but I'm beginning to see lose his resolve, lose his direction of travel, lose the ability to convince me, let alone the players, then you start to move into a direction where you go, okay, the only thing that's holding this person up is their badly fitting suit.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.